In the picturesque landscapes of Kamas, Utah, the Richins family appeared to be the living embodiment of the American dream. Kouri Richins was a successful businesswoman, and her husband, Eric, was a beloved local figure. Together with their 3 young sons, they resided in a home that whispered of comfort and stability. To the outside world, they were the perfect unit, anchored by a shared vision for a bright and prosperous future. But behind the heavy wooden doors of their mountain retreat, a sinister reality was quietly taking shape, waiting for the cover of darkness to reveal its lethal edges to the entirety of the world. On the night of March 3rd, 2022, that facade of domestic bliss shattered. According to Kouri, it was a night of celebration for a recent business closing. She allegedly prepared a Moscow Mule for Eric, a final toast, before they retired. Kouri told investigators that she later went to check on one of their children who was having a nightmare, eventually falling asleep in their room. When she returned hours later, she claimed she found Eric cold and unresponsive. The silence was broken only by her calls to emergency services. By the time help arrived, the pillar of the family was gone, leaving a vacuum of grief that seemed, at first, to be a tragic and inexplicable twist of fate. In the months following the funeral, Kouri stepped into a new role, the grief expert. To help her sons navigate the loss of their father, she authored a children's book titled Are You With Me? The book was presented as a tender guide for children grappling with loss, promising that a parent's spirit remained ever present. Kouri became a fixture on local television, tearfully discussing her husband's legacy and the immense weight of her own pain. She was the face of a widow transformed by purpose, turning tragedy into a beacon of hope for others. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. Yet while Kouri was embraced by the media, a different sentiment brewed within Eric's biological family. His sisters did not see a grieving widow. They saw a woman suspected of darker intentions. They voiced their suspicions to law enforcement, painting a vivid picture of a marriage defined by tension. They claimed that Eric had been living in fear, even confiding in them that if anything happened to him, his wife was the culprit. This was not the narrative of a heartbroken spouse, but a chilling prophecy of premeditated harm. The investigation took a sharp, clinical turn when the medical examiner's report was finally released. The toxicology results delivered a bombshell. Eric had not died of natural causes. His system was filled with an astronomical level of illicit fentanyl, a powerful drug, 5 times the lethal limit. This was an oral overdose, meaning the odorless poison had been ingested, likely hidden within the drink Kouri prepared for their celebration. The grief expert was suddenly standing in the center of a homicide investigation that would shock the entire nation. As detectives began peeling back the layers of their financial life, they discovered a final, desperate act of self-preservation by the victim. Eric had been deeply suspicious. Months before his death, he had surreptitiously contacted legal counsel to remove Kouri from his legal will and replace her as the beneficiary of his life insurance policy. He had effectively locked her out of his estate, a secret move suggesting he knew his time was running out. Kouri was the author of a book about loss, but her husband had already written the final chapter of their financial union, leaving a trail of motives that pointed directly back to the woman now mourning him on national television. This sudden revelation turned a story of unfortunate tragedy into a calculated game of betrayal, where every tear shed by the widow was viewed through the lens of suspicion by the authorities she once called for help. The deep cracks in the Richins' marriage were not just emotional, they were deeply financial, are rooted in a hidden desperation Kouri struggled to hide. Central to this tension was a massive and daunting $2 million fixer-upper mansion, an expansive estate Kouri was obsessed with flipping for a profit. Eric, ever the pragmatic businessman, saw it as a financial abyss and adamantly refused to sign the papers. This disagreement became a bitter and silent war of wills, where Kouri's desire for prestige clashed with Eric's need for stability. Her financial walls were closing in, and her husband's refusal to accommodate her ambition was creating a pressure cooker of resentment inside their home. Long before March, the shadow of murder had flickered across their lives. On Valentine's Day, 2022, Eric experienced a terrifying foreshadowing of his end. After consuming a meal and a drink prepared by Kouri, he became violently, inexplicably ill. His body revolted with a force that left him reeling, and a chilling realization began to take root. He didn't just feel sick, he felt targeted. He confided in a close friend and his family, uttering the haunting words that would later echo through the halls of justice. "I think my wife is trying to poison me." This was not a casual suspicion. It was a desperate warning from a man who realized the person he loved might be his executioner. When investigators finally bypassed the security of Kouri's digital life, the mourning widow's facade crumbled under the weight of a deleted paper trail. Hidden within the recesses of her phone were messages to an individual identified as a housekeeper, but the conversation was far from domestic. Kouri was hunting for something specific and lethal. She used coded language, asking for the Michael Jackson stuff, a clear reference to the powerful prescription painkillers that had famously claimed the life of the king of pop. These messages revealed a calculating quest for several illicit substances, including hydrocodone and the deadly and potent fentanyl, during the weeks leading up to Eric's death. The mechanics of these transactions were as cold as they were deliberate. Prosecutors allege that Kouri met with her contact on multiple occasions, exchanging thousands of dollars for small, nondescript pills. The first batch was hydrocodone, but when that failed to achieve the desired result, Kouri returned for something stronger. She reportedly paid $900 for 15 to 30 fentanyl pills, the substance found in his system at 5 times the lethal limit. Each pill was a step toward a pre-planned end, a methodical acquisition of a silent murder weapon that left a permanent stain on her soul. This dark pursuit of drugs was mirrored by a desperate secret scramble for Eric's wealth. Secretly behind his back, Kouri had attempted to manipulate his life insurance policies, trying to reinstate herself as the primary beneficiary. The company informed her that she could not change the policy without Eric's written consent. This rejection didn't stop her. It only heightened the stakes. If she couldn't get the money through legal maneuvering, she would find another way to unlock the vault of Eric's estate. Her failed attempts to control the money legally only accelerated her move toward more permanent, lethal solutions. The true depth of Kouri's coldness was revealed in the immediate aftermath of Eric's passing. On the very next day, while his body was still being processed by the medical examiner, Kouri finalized the closing on the $2 million mansion Eric had so vehemently opposed. It was an elaborate victory dance on his grave. To celebrate the acquisition, She threw a party in the house, inviting friends over to toast to her new beginning. The grieving widow was now sipping drinks in the luxury estate his death had finally allowed her to buy, showing a chilling lack of remorse. As the police investigation intensified, they turned their attention to Kouri's internet search history, discovering a digital diary of a killer. Her queries were not those of a concerned wife, but of a calculated killer. And she had searched for lethal doses of fentanyl, how to claim life insurance, and what the police look for in an autopsy. Every chilling search, conducted in the quiet hours, painted a picture of a woman who was not reacting to a tragedy, but directing it. The haunting digital breadcrumbs led straight to the heart of a conspiracy, and as the handcuffs were readied, the final pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. The handcuffs finally clicked shut on the morning of May 8th, 2023, effectively ending the elaborate performance Kouri Richins had maintained for over a year. As authorities escorted the self-proclaimed grief expert away from her home, the international headlines shifted instantly from sympathy to total shock. The world watched as the mourning wife became the prime suspect in a plot that defied belief, wherein the woman who tearfully described her husband's final moments on morning talk shows was now led to a cold cell, her polished facade of the widow crumbling in the harsh, unforgiving light of the criminal justice system. The community of Kamas, which once rallied around her, watched in silence as the narrative of a tragic family loss was rewritten as a cold-blooded and calculated assassination. This was the public execution of a persona she had spent months building. Behind the bars of the Summit County Jail, Kouri's penchant for control did not waver. Prosecutors soon uncovered a chilling piece of evidence that became known in legal circles as the Walk the Dog letter. This was a 6-page document sent to her mother, disguised as a mundane update on her life. While Kouri later claimed it was merely a draft for a fictional book she was writing, the state argued it was something far more sinister, a detailed roadmap for witness tampering. In the scribbles, Kouri instructed her mother to coordinate false testimonies. She wanted them to tell investigators that Eric had secretly obtained fentanyl during trips to Mexico, a narrative designed to explain the lethal levels of drugs in his system. This attempt backfired spectacularly, providing the prosecution with powerful evidence of a consciousness of guilt. Her defense lawyers, facing a mounting pile of digital and forensic evidence, pivoted to a strategy of deflection. They argued that the entire case was built on circumstantial findings and that Eric Richins had been a closeted drug user who successfully hid a serious opioid addiction from everyone but his wife. They painted him as a man struggling with demons, suggesting his death was a tragic accident. This narrative was a bitter pill for Eric's family, who denied he ever touched substances. Amidst this escalating legal warfare sat the 3 young Richins boys. The children for whom Kouri had written her book became the tragic pawns in a fierce custody battle. Their lives were now split between the mother who claimed to be their protector and the paternal aunts who were convinced that she was their father's murderer. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was heavy with tension. Kouri sat through the grueling proceedings with a stoic, almost defiant expression, showing none of the vulnerability she had displayed during interviews. Her cold demeanor stood in sharp contrast to the raw, visceral emotion of Eric's sisters. When they took the stand, They recounted Eric's growing fears and the haunting warnings he had shared before his life was cut short. They spoke of a devoted father who loved his sons more than life itself, a man who had felt the shadows closing in and had tried his best to protect his family's future and legacy. Every witness and piece of evidence chipped away at the image of the perfect Utah marriage, revealing instead a household where trust had been replaced by a lingering silent terror. Today, the ultimate irony of the entire Utah saga remains the children's book itself. It was a prop, a move to monetize a murder and cement a narrative before the truth could surface. As proceedings move toward a verdict, Kouri remains in custody, her fate resting with a jury. Her sons now face a future shaped by the actions of a mother who claimed to be their guiding light. Her story serves as a reminder that the person writing the book on grief is often the one who authored the tragedy. The facade vanished, leaving the wreckage of a family destroyed by greed and a widow whose words may become her undoing. In the end, justice will define whether she is a grieving mother or the mastermind behind a deadly and deceitful game.